I couldn't believe it. My husband and I had rented an Airbnb in a remote cabin to celebrate our wedding anniversary and get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The pictures on the listing had shown a cozy cabin nestled in the woods, surrounded by nothing but nature. As my partner and I drove down the dirt road that led to the remote cabin we had rented on Airbnb, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The cabin was supposed to be isolated, surrounded by nothing but dense woods, but it felt like we were being watched. As we pulled up to the cabin, we were greeted by a middle-aged man who introduced himself as the owner. He seemed friendly enough, but there was something about the way he looked at us that made me feel uneasy. He showed us around the cabin, pointing out the amenities and assuring us that we had everything we needed for a comfortable stay. As the evening wore on, my partner and I settled in, grateful for the peace and quiet. But we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. At first, we brushed it off as just being paranoid from watching too many horror movies. But as the days passed, things only got worse. We started to notice small things, like the way the curtains would move when we weren't touching them, or how the coffee cups would be arranged differently in the morning. It was like someone had been in the cabin while we were sleeping. One evening, while my husband was taking a shower, I decided to search the cabin for any signs of intrusion. That's when I found it, a tiny camera hidden in a plant pot, pointed directly at the bed. I immediately called my husband and showed him what I had found. I was immediately creeped out, but my partner tried to reassure me that it was probably just a security camera. But as we looked around the room, we noticed other small devices, a microphone hidden in the lamp, a camera in the smoke detector. It was clear that our host had been spying on us. Searching further, we noticed another set of microphones. They were hidden in the walls, and we could hear the sound of our own conversations being played back to us through speakers hidden in the ceiling. We realized that we were being watched and listened to every second of our stay. The thought of someone watching us sleep, hearing our most intimate moments, made us both feel sick to our stomachs. We tried to confront the host, but he was nowhere to be found and the man had locked the doors and windows from the outside. We were trapped, with no way to escape. My heart was pounding in my chest as my husband and I sat in stunned silence, staring at the array of surveillance equipment that our Airbnb host had set up all around the cabin. We felt violated, exposed, and terrified. Who knew how long the host had been watching us and listening to our private conversations? My mind raced with questions. Was he watching us right now? Could he hear us talking about him, about what we had found? I looked at my husband, and I could see the fear in his eyes as well. We both knew we had to get out of there, but the doors and windows were locked from the outside. My husband tried the doors and windows again, but they were still locked tight. We were trapped. I could feel a sense of hopelessness creeping over me as the night wore on. Every little noise made me jump. Was that someone coming to get us? Was that the sound of a chainsaw in the distance? I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had taken hold of me. It wasn't until the next morning, when we finally managed to break out of the cabin and call the police, that we discovered the true horror. The man who had rented us the cabin was a notorious serial killer, known for luring couples to remote locations and torturing them before killing them. We were lucky to have escaped with our lives, but the experience left us both traumatized. We couldn't help but wonder how many other unsuspecting couples had fallen victim to this twisted Airbnb host. From that day on, we never stayed in an Airbnb again. The thought of renting a room from a stranger, with no idea what kind of surveillance equipment they might have installed, was too much for us to bear. The experience taught us a valuable lesson about the importance of personal privacy and the dangers of trusting strangers with our safety and well-being. I had always been an adventurous traveler, seeking out new experiences and cultures to immerse myself in. So when I stumbled upon an affordable Airbnb in a foreign country, I jumped at the chance to explore a new place and meet new people. Little did I know, my sense of adventure would quickly turn into a fight for survival. As I arrived at the Airbnb, a spacious and elegant apartment in the heart of the city, I was greeted by a friendly and welcoming host. She showed me around the place, pointing out all of the amenities and making small talk about the city. Everything seemed normal, but there was something in her demeanor that made me feel uneasy. Over the next few days, I began to notice some odd things. I started to notice strange things. Men would come and go from the apartment at all hours of the day and night, and I couldn't help but wonder who they were and what they were doing there. The host would always insist on being there to greet me whenever I came back to the apartment, even if it was late at night. She also seemed to always know where I was and what I was doing, despite me not telling her anything. She became increasingly distant, hardly speaking to me at all and disappearing for hours at a time, and I started to feel uneasy, like something was very wrong. One day, while the host was out, I decided to do some exploring. I stumbled upon a locked door in the back of the apartment, and my curiosity got the better of me. I picked the lock and opened the door, revealing a hidden room filled with women. They looked terrified and traumatized, and I realized with horror that I had stumbled upon a sex trafficking ring. I knew I had to get out of there before I became a victim too. My heart raced as I tried to think of a way to escape. I couldn't just leave, the men were watching my every move. I couldn't call the police, I didn't speak the language and I had no idea where I was. I was completely alone, in a foreign country, with no way out. The host returned and caught me snooping around. She was furious, and I knew I was in serious danger. I tried to play it cool, but she knew I had discovered her secret and was determined to make sure I couldn't tell anyone. I spent the next few days trying to find a way to escape. I couldn't leave the apartment without being followed, and I didn't speak the language well enough to ask for help. I was trapped, with no way out. But I refused to give up. I knew I had to keep my wits about me and find a way to escape. I began to study the layout of the apartment, looking for any weaknesses or vulnerabilities. I also tried to make contact with anyone who could help me, sending messages to my family and friends back home, hoping that someone would be able to reach out to the authorities. As the days went on, the situation grew more and more dire. The host and his associates became increasingly aggressive and hostile, making it clear that they weren't going to let me go easily. But I didn't give up hope, and I continued to search for any opportunity to escape. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, an opportunity presented itself. One of the men who had been guarding me had a momentary lapse in attention, and I was able to slip out of the apartment unnoticed. I ran as fast as I could, not looking back until I was sure I was safe. I never looked back, not even once, and I never stayed in an Airbnb again. The experience taught me to always trust my instincts, to be aware of my surroundings, and to never let my guard down. But most of all, it taught me the horrors that lurked in the shadows, and the importance of fighting for your life, no matter the odds. Before we continue, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. It was supposed to be the party of the year, a wild weekend in a luxurious Airbnb with my closest college friends. I couldn't believe my luck when my friends and I found the perfect Airbnb for our weekend getaway. The listing was for a luxurious house in the countryside, complete with a private pool and plenty of space for a group of college students looking to let loose. The pictures showed a beautiful property, and the price was right, so we booked it immediately. As we arrived at the house, the excitement was palpable. We rushed inside, eager to explore our new digs and start the party. The house was huge, with multiple floors and rooms, but there were strange noises coming from the attic. At first, we brushed it off, thinking that it was just the old house settling or maybe some wild animal had made its way into the attic. But as the night wore on, things only got worse. Doors would slam shut on their own, windows would open and close, and we could hear whispers coming from the walls. We tried to ignore it, thinking that it was just our imaginations running wild, but then we started to find things out of place. Objects that we had left in one spot would mysteriously appear in another, and we would find strange markings on the walls and floors. It was like someone or something was playing games with us. It wasn't until we heard the sound of footsteps in the middle of the night that we knew something was seriously wrong. We all huddled together in one room, too afraid to leave, too afraid to confront whatever was out there. That's when we saw it, a figure lurking in the shadows, watching us with cold, dead eyes. We could see the silhouette of a man, dressed in all black, holding a large knife. We screamed and ran, trying to find a way out of the house, but the doors were locked from the outside. We were trapped, with no way to escape. We could hear the sound of the intruder's footsteps getting closer, and we knew that our lives were in danger. We had to find a way out, or we would become the next victims in a long line of disappearances. We searched the house, looking for any possible escape route, and that's when we found it, a hidden door in the basement that led to an underground tunnel. We knew it was a long shot, but it was our only chance. We ran through the tunnel, not knowing where it would lead us, but hoping that it would be a way out. As we emerged from the tunnel, we found ourselves on the beach, just a few feet from the water. We could hear the intruder's footsteps behind us, getting closer by the second. We had to act fast. We jumped into the water and swam as fast as we could, trying to put as much distance between us and the house as possible. We could hear the intruder's screams of frustration, but we didn't stop until we were safe on the other side of the beach. We called the police, and they arrived at the house soon after. They searched the entire place but found no sign of the intruder. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. We never found out who he was or why he had targeted us, but we knew that we had come dangerously close to becoming his victims.